Welcome in. Welcome. Should we use green? Let me see if I can get a different pen here. Here we go. Hello. Welcome. Good to see everybody. Thanks for coming by tonight. I know I'm at a little bit different time, but this time just worked better for me tonight. So thanks for being flexible. Welcome in. Hello. Good evening. Hello. Hi there. Hello. Oh, look at that. Hi, Chris. Welcome. Permaculture. Hello. Welcome in. Hello, Chica. Solid Chica. Andy. Hello. Lee. Oh, good evening, everyone. Happy Wednesday. Or, hey, it's Wednesday. Sometimes that's okay, too. Hi, Andy. Welcome in. Hey, hi, Chris. Oh my gosh, Chris, I'm loving the Broadway stuff. I'm just absolutely loving it. Every single post, I'm like, what's next? I love it. You're doing great work over there. We love that. We're very thankful. Okay, Chaos. Hi, welcome in. I have I have someone over here causing a little bit of trouble as we get started here. What's happening? I don't know. Hundreds of albums. Oh, I'm so excited. Well, I mean, take your time, but I just have to say it is quite enjoyable. I'm really enjoying that. Yes, meow. Oh my goodness. A little extra helper here for a little bit, causing some trouble. Oh my gosh, everybody. Well, hello. Hi, Steffi. Welcome. So we do have some interesting things going on, but I thought let's go ahead and focus on El Salvador. Hopefully I'm spelling that correctly. Is that right? Is there an E at the end, or is that right? Hopefully that's okay. Yes, crafted by chaos. Yeah, slow the kitty down. They're saying slow the kitty down. Let's go a little slower. Right, exactly, Sylvia. Not much is very boring for sure. Oh my gosh, everyone. Good evening. Welcome. Yeah, I'm not sure. I've got just a heckler with me here briefly. Yes. There's a flying cat. Yes, Bruce Wayne's mother. Meanwhile. That's so funny. So if people can follow that would be helpful. Oh, absolutely. Okay, excellent. The record project. Hello, lots of laughs. Yes, the lovely assistant. Oh my goodness. Now churches can endorse politicians. Oh no, oh dear. Did that just come out? Did I miss that? Good trouble, I agree. Oh my gosh. Was there a new decision? They need to slow down, I think, their decisions right now. So I can catch up. The paralegal, yes. Oh my God. Oh, last night. Yikes. Yes, I finally have a paralegal helping. Yesterday. Okay, I'll have to look that up. I have just been in my own world. There have been so many things going on. And I've been spending so much time on these executive orders that, I'm just like down a rabbit hole. So it's been a lot. Good evening, Kaya. Hello. IRS is writing laws now. Oh, dear. I need the comic relief. Oh, I know, right? Yes, the paralegal. I think it's very cute as well. We're very talented. We're very talented over here. Was the IRS who said it? Yeah, I don't know. That IRS is kind of... I think we're having some problems with leadership at the moment, but we'll see how it shakes out. Oh, what case tonight? So we're going to talk about El Salvador tonight, everyone. This is the JGG case. So JGG, but it's now actually the, is it Sanchez? I think it's Sanchez now. Now the Sanchez case. All right. This was the DC case, right, where the judge said, turn the planes around. That's this case, turn the planes around. And they've been trying to get some discovery going. they've been fighting discovery and trying to get some information from the government. And the government's been like, well, we're not going to do any information because we don't have to. And the judge has already found a probable cause. Oh, wait, hold on a minute. He's already found probable cause for violation of a court order, but hasn't done a full sanction yet on that. But he has a finding of it. So that's kind of been put on the back burner. But we just got information directly from El Salvador regarding what happened between the U.S. and El Salvador and whether or not there's actually an agreement. Because that's a huge question, right? Because the government's been saying, well, we have an agreement with El Salvador and we can't share any information because it's foreign relations and those kinds of things. And so because of that, we haven't had much. But now El Salvador is coming back and they're telling a little bit different story than what the government's been telling us. El Salvador situation. It does. Oh my gosh, Coyote Katie, I tell you what. A new subscriber sticker. Oh my gosh, I'll make it a subscriber sticker for sure. For sure. I know. Sorry. my assistant here. Oh my gosh. Yes. Right. So anyway, so that's what we've got tonight. I have papers that have been filed as part of an exhibit on this case where El Salvador kind of starts explaining what's been going on their side of it. And, spoiler alert, they're saying they do not have jurisdiction and that there's been some kind of, they're even going as far as saying there's been some pressure put on them to do stuff that they weren't sure they were comfortable with, honestly. So it's quite a bit. Really, for tomorrow. Right. Did the number come out, VC, on the public? Has that come out? I can just check it myself, but for sure, we'll have to look into that. There's some things, there's definitely some movement going on. Oh, thank you so much, Ruth. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Not yet, okay. Thank you, Professional Spoonie. Thank you so much. So let's go ahead and dive on in, everyone, here. So we're going to be reading through what El Salvador has to say. So this is, again, the JGG case, or now the Sanchez case. And this was the DC case where they they moved everybody originally to El Salvador. So this is the original case that kind of started it all. And we have finally been able to get just some trickling information coming in. So this is part of a filing for this case. Actually, I left the other filings in the color printer. Maybe if my assistant could go grab those for me. There are multiple filings that came out, and this exhibit is just a batch of paperwork here. And half of it's in Spanish and half of it's in English. And they're going through again and giving El Salvador's side of the story here. Hello, welcome. Thank you, assistant. All right, so there, we got the cat again. Oh my gosh. All right, so I've got a couple cases here. Let me pull this one out. This is the lawsuit that's been brought here. Okay. So this is what I'm talking about when I'm saying it's Sanchez now. It used to be JGG, but now it's being referred to as the Sanchez case. So let me see here. 202, 53, 54, 102. Okay. Got it. The floating sticky notes giving me life today. Well, we all need that, don't we? we need a little bit of that. Yes, no, I prepared my tang ahead of time. so they don't have to worry about that. But yes, thankful for that. All right, so here's the documentation that was filed. And it was filed on the 7th. And this is a Notice of United Nations document. So we're starting to really get into the danger zone here with what's been going on in this case. With all of these cases, but we've got another lawsuit that's been filed regarding, just to remind everybody, This is the other lawsuit that's been filed, and Robert F. Kennedy Human Rights, and they filed this last month versus the Department of State and Marco Rubio, specifically because of the El Salvador situation. So there's a lot going on here. there's a lot going on. So let me dive in. This is just a little bit here, just a couple of pages to give you an overview, and then we'll dive into the exhibit. Yes, I know. Oh, I know. I know, Boxer Mom. I tell you, I was going to read through that before, but I just can't bring myself to read through it. It's just really, yikes, really awful. Yeah, oh my gosh. Now, one quick note. My toner, everyone, I just got a black toner on May 29th, and it just today went out. There's like so much stuff going on right now. It's too much. It's too much stuff. They need to calm down. All right, here we go. So notice of United Nations document. So petitioners respectfully notify this court of the attached document from the United Nations Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights Working Group on Enforced or Involuntary Disappearances. A report on enforced or involuntary disappearances in the WGEID's four cases investigating the disappearances of 4 Venezuelan men who were sent to El Salvador on March 15th of 2025. And it's here at Exhibit 1. So footnote 1 down here, the attached exhibit has redacted personal identifying information for the 4 men discussed in the report. Petitioners can file an unredacted version of the exhibit under seal at the court's request, with the exception of one of the cases for particular privacy reasons related to that individual. So this is the exhibit we'll be reading through here. Petitioners provide both the original Spanish language version and an English language translation. As set forth in the attached report, the government of El Salvador responded to the UN's inquiry opened by the 4 families asking about the disappearance of their family members. You know, there's trouble when the UN gets involved, everyone, so yikes. Here's our first piece here. Yeah, kidnapping. Yeah. The Salvadoran state emphatically states that its authorities have not arrested, detained, or transferred the persons referred to in the communications of the working group. The actions of the state of El Salvador have been limited to the implementation of a bilateral cooperation mechanism with another state, through which it's facilitated the use of Salvadoran prison infrastructure for the custody of persons detained within the scope of the justice system and law enforcement of that other state. The other state being the U.S., right? In this context, the jurisdiction and legal responsibility for these persons lie exclusively with the competent foreign authorities by virtue of international agreements signed and in accordance with the principles of sovereignty and international cooperation in criminal matters. In this regard, the actions attributable to the Salvadoran state are limited to its sovereignty and territorial jurisdiction, and therefore it cannot be held responsible for the failure to observe the principle of non-refoulement with respect to the persons mentioned. So this is really huge. Yeah, so this is really huge. Yeah, we knew it all along. The government came in and said, well, it's El Salvador now, right? It's completely up to El Salvador. They're the ones with the jurisdiction. They're the ones, with all of the power here. And El Salvador is coming in and saying, we don't have any power. This is directly under the jurisdiction of the U.S. Now, again, this is going into the JGG case, right? So that D.C. case where they said to the judge, well, we can't get them back. They're outside of our jurisdiction. We can't do anything about it. And El Salvador is saying they're not in our jurisdiction. So this is a huge moment here. Yeah, they knew it. They knew it. All right, so next up, this information came to petitioners' attention within the last week when counsel for petitioners obtained the Spanish language report from one of the families. So the petitioners here, they didn't even know about it. A family member was able to get that report and give it to the lawyers. Although the United States was aware of this document, as evinced by the fact that it was copied on the reports for all 4 cases, it was neither provided to petitioners, even though it is clearly encompassed in petitioners' request for production. So they were not in compliance with discovery, nor provided to the court here. So, and then they're setting out where their discovery requests are here. All documents memorializing, documenting, or describing the arrangements between the United States and El Salvador concerning the detention of the alleged bad people in El Salvador. So, and remember here too, the government has said repeatedly, like, this is all top secret, or we're not allowed to talk about it. It's gonna have negative impacts on our foreign relations. So all of this information, like they already had this, and it just so happened that someone was able to get this through one of the families and give it to the attorneys. I can't emphasize enough on how much of a violation this is to withhold evidence like this. Like, it's one of the biggest reasons you can get a ding on your law license is by intentionally acting in bad faith and not turning over discovery materials. I mean, that's huge. That's huge here. This court correctly held that whether or not respondents' defendants have constructive custody of petitioners for purposes of habeas jurisdiction, respondents are required to facilitate the ability of the CCOT class to seek habeas relief. However, should it become necessary for petitioners to pursue the constructive custody issue, petitioners reserve the right to seek additional discovery in light of this new information. So they're saying, we want to take a look, actually, we want more information now that we see this was withheld from us, as well as respondents' original inadequate discovery responses, and this court's acknowledgement that its constructive custody conclusion was predicated on the current record, citing that particular record here. And moving over to page 3, while it is a close question, the current record does not support plaintiffs' assertion that they are in the constructive custody of the United States. And that's a direct quote of the government. They're quoting the government saying you don't have custody, and now they've got evidence that they have just submitted that, yeah, you do actually. Such additional discovery may be particularly important because this new evidence contradicts the underlying custody conclusion in the Kozak Declaration. Now, again, we've kind of talked about how the courts have come in and said, we're just going to rely on the government's declarations, that they are reliable, and the Supreme Court. And we've had justices come in and say, how is this reliable? And they're like, well, it just is. And so that's been an issue. So now we have this custody issue set out in this declaration. So there may be an issue of reliability now with this declaration, which is dated after El Salvador's response to the UN. And so it was after this report was done and after petitioners sought habeas review. So again, they're pulling out and saying, I think this declaration isn't reliable. And that's huge. Again, because the U.S. Supreme Court said that it was, or some of them did. It was and remains my understanding that the detention and ultimate disposition of those detained in CCOT and other Salvadoran detention facilities are matters within the legal authority of El Salvador in accordance with its domestic and international legal obligations. So that's what was put into that declaration. That's incorrect here. And so we're citing case law. Once the federal jurisdiction has attached in district court, it is not defeated by the release of the petitioner prior to the completion of proceedings on such application. So we've got all the receipts here for the mess up that the government has done. Right, exactly. So that's very distressing. Again, when we're talking about credibility, the government, the way in criminal court, the government is viewed as this 600-pound gorilla, right? And that's why the defendants need as much as we can give them in order for them to try to combat that, right? To make everything equal. So we have the Brady rules regarding all evidence being shown to the defendant. We have all kinds of other careful rules in order for our defendants to have some kind of a chance against a 600-pound gorilla. And so usually the justice system will take a look at the government and give them the benefit of the doubt. But in this situation, what we're seeing is this turn in the courts, at least at the district level, at the district court level, and probably the Court of Appeals, where they're seeing and they're saying, like, your credibility is questionable right now because of your prior filings. The benefit of the doubt that they've given the government in the past is absolutely in question at this time, especially in this DC case. So we've already got a finding again of intentional bad faith, of intentionally not following a court order, and we're continuing on from there. So this is huge. This is a huge piece of evidence and a huge showing of how the government's credibility is really not great. Yeah. So let's look through this exhibit. So exhibit 1 here, there's really 3 primary pieces in here to look at. We've got they're looking for the four men from Venezuela that are missing. That's what the UN was looking for. All right. So there are reports for each person that they're looking for here. So let's take a look. Again, here we have a report on enforced or involuntary disappearances. Yep, the UN's investigating the disappearances. El Salvador, and then we've got redacted information here. The United States of America, Venezuela here, and March 26th. Again, setting out this information was available before he wrote in his declaration that El Salvador had, all of the custody going on. All right, information from the source was on March 23rd. So here we go. Let me pull this down a little bit. I know I don't like to pull these exhibits or pull this paper for the comments, but because it is at kind of like the top here, I will pull it for a minute. Ian has to step in. Oh, I know. Somebody's got to step in, right? Even El Salvador is like, dude, let's talk about this. That's pretty sad. All right, so let me read this here for you. I have it on a different screen. So, Mr. So-and-so redacted, a Venezuelan national and holder of the United States non-citizen number that they put there, was in the custody of Immigration and Customs Enforcement in Arizona when he was allegedly deported from the United States of America to El Salvador as part of a mass deportation that took place since March 15th of 2025. Person associated with Mr. So-and-so stated that his name disappeared from the United States ICE online detention locator since that date. On March 21st, persons associated with Mr. So-and-so identified his name on a list of persons allegedly deported from the United States of America to El Salvador, which was published by a local media outlet. However, according to the information received to date, neither the government of El Salvador nor the government of the United States has published official information on the list of deported persons or their current place in detention. At the time of this communication, the fate and whereabouts of Mr. So-and-so remains unknown. And this was sent to the government March 26th. Yeah, it's really, really bad. This is so bad. This is so bad. All right, so let's keep a flipping here. All right, now this is the next. This one is going to be copied a few times. So we'll just keep going through this. Here's the big one, the big report. So let me bump this up a little bit. Again, I have this on a bigger screen so I can read it more carefully for everybody. Yeah, it's pretty bad. It's pretty bad, everybody. All right, so here we go. The next piece here. Let me put my sticky note on here. All right, so starting at the top, according to information received from the government of El Salvador. So this is El Salvador. The state of El Salvador herein wishes to refer to the communications from the Working Group on Enforced or Involuntary Disappearances with reference GSO 217 SLV, right? Which states the aforementioned group has received information on alleged enforced disappearances in El Salvador in the context of mass deportations carried out between the government of the United States of America and El Salvador. So now we're here, if you're following along. The Salvadoran state has conducted a detailed analysis on the claims presented in the communications sent by the working group, which indicate that the persons mentioned, 1, were in the custody of the United States Immigration and Customs Enforcement, 2, were allegedly deported to El Salvador on March 15th, 3, ceased to appear on ICE's online detainee locator system as of that date, and 4, were identified on a list of deportees published by a local media outlet, and 5, their fate and whereabouts are unknown. Okay, here we go. Ooh. In response to the above, the state of El Salvador provides its response to these communications, presenting its observations and specific requests for the due attention of the working group. Again, this is a UN here, looking for missing people in El Salvador. There we go. Kind of make it a little bit easier to understand what I'm reading through here. There we go. All right. Yikes. Okay. Here we go. Number one. On the lack of grounds for the request for information from the state of El Salvador. The Salvadoran state emphatically states that its authorities have not arrested, detained, or transferred the persons referred to in this communication of the working group. The action of the state of El Salvador have been limited to the implementation of implementation of a bilateral cooperation mechanism with another state, through which it has facilitated the use of Salvadoran prison infrastructure for the custody of persons detained within the scope of the justice system and law enforcement of that other state. In this context, the jurisdiction and legal responsibility for these persons lie exclusively with the competent foreign authorities by virtue of the international agreements signed in accordance with the principles of sovereignty and international cooperation in criminal matters. So this is what was quoted in the notice by the plaintiffs. All right, so that's number one. Paragraph 1. In this regard, the actions attributable to the Salvadoran state are limited to its sovereignty, territorial jurisdiction, and therefore it cannot be held responsible for the failure to observe the principle of non-refoulement with respect to the persons mentioned. And so number 2 here. All right, number 2. On the absence of elements constituting enforced disappearance attributable to the state of El Salvador. In this regard, the state of El Salvador emphasizes that the claims presented do not attribute any direct action to the Salvadoran state that meets the definition of enforced disappearance under the international law and the working methods of the working group. The definition of enforced disappearance, right here, as established in the International Convention for the Protection of All Persons from Enforced Disappearance, the Inter-American Convention on Enforced Disappearance of Persons, the Rome Statute, and the jurisprudence of regional human rights systems require the concurrence of specific elements, a deprivation of liberty by state agents or persons acting with their acquiescence, followed by a refusal to acknowledge that deprivation of liberty or to reveal the person's whereabouts, whereas in the present case, the claims are based on the alleged disappearance of the persons indicated, derived from the absence of their names in a system administered by a foreign authority, the United States Immigration and Customs Enforcement, and in a publication of a non-official media outlet whose operations are not registered in El Salvador. paragraph here. They're trying to say that they're just the landlord. Exactly right. That's exactly right. They just own the facility. They don't know anything about the people. And they've said that facility is for law enforcement. So what they're saying here is we were told that they were supposed to be, criminals within the justice system, not within the administrative system of deportations. So that's kind of a big deal here, because if we don't have criminal offenses going on, and they told El Salvador that these 200 people were all criminals, and that's why they agreed to take them, like, that's kind of a big deal. Kind of a big whoop-de-doo here. All right, so let's see here. In a public, right. All right, so here we go. We're starting right here. The working methods of the working group on enforced or involuntary disappearances require that communications specify the measures taken by relatives or representatives to determine the person's whereabouts, including the exhaustion of domestic remedies. It should be noted that the claims presented do not meet this requirement. Consequently, failure to comply with the decisions or information mechanisms of foreign authorities cannot be attributed to the state of El Salvador, nor does it constitute a valid basis for the working group to request information from it. Number 3 here. On the proper registration of these cases by the working group on enforced disappearances, in response to the working group's statement that these cases are only included in the statistics of the government of El Salvador, here we go. The state notes that according to the working methods of the working group on enforced or involuntary disappearance, a case must only be included in the statistics of the state under whose jurisdiction the person was deprived of liberty or last seen. These conditions are not met in the cases mentioned with regards to the state of El Salvador. This is important here, because then what's happening is these 4 dings, these 4 disappearances then are strikes against the U.S. since those persons were not under the jurisdiction of the Salvadoran state at the time of their alleged deprivation of liberty or when they were last seen. So that's what's happening here. El Salvador is like, it's not us. Go to the U.S. That's where they're missing. Consistent with the above, the state respectfully requests the working group to exclude the cases of so-and-so from the statistics, probably because they have enough people in their statistics, and from any records pertaining to El Salvador. Finally, El Salvador reiterates its commitment to complying with its international human rights obligations, including the prevention of enforced disappearances in accordance with the Human Rights Council Resolution 712. To this end, it confirms that it has a solid institutional framework and domestic regulations that constitute a framework for the protection and guarantee of the rights of persons deprived of liberty, regardless of their nationality. Oh my goodness gracious. Yeah, it's really bad. This is really bad. This is really bad. Yeah, so that's going to be a couple of strikes against the U.S. So now we know where El Salvador is standing. Again, so just to make sure, let's go back up here to the exact wording that El Salvador is stating here. Right here. The Salvadoran state emphatically states that its authorities have not arrested, detained, or transferred the persons referred to in the communications with the working group. The actions of the state of El Salvador have been limited to the implementation of the bilateral cooperation mechanism with another state through which it's facilitated the use of a Salvadoran prison infrastructure for the custody of persons detained within the scope of the justice system and law enforcement of that other state. So this is huge. Again, this is so important. They're saying we've not arrested them. We don't have any of that going on, and they're supposed to be people within the justice system. Again, so criminals. Right, exactly, Navy vet, exactly. Oh my gosh, it's really awful. All right, so let's flip through. There's one more in here that's got a unique piece to it. So again, here's another person, and most of this is copies. So here, these are exactly the same, I believe, except for the only thing that's changed has been, if we look here, immigration customs in Arizona. So this one's Arizona, and this one is custody of ICE in Enval, Texas. All right, so the language, the rest of the language is the same, but they're different facilities for different people. All right, so this is Elvel. I'm probably saying that name wrong, but that's fine. Texas. We got Arizona, Texas. I did go through each of these. And it's exactly the same as what I have just read here. See, there's the 1, the 2, and the 3. And we have this one here. Then we have another one in the custody of ICE in Elvel. So we've got another Texas here. So there we go. And then again, this is the same response here until we get to this piece here. All right, so this piece is the next one that is unique. Let me just make sure here that it's the same. Okay. All right, so this is the same language, but it's a different, broken down a little differently. So let me read this to you here. It will sound pretty familiar. There's a lot of cutting and pasting, but that's okay. In response to the above, I just want to make sure I get this right here. And what page is this? This is page 17. Sorry, scrolling on my big screen here. Okay, page 17. Again, this is available online for anyone who would like to look it up yourself. This is the case number up here, document 160-1. So that means it's exhibit 1, and we are on page 17 of 32. All right, so let's take a look here. According to information received from the government of El Salvador, so the state of El Salvador herewith wishes to refer to the communications from the working group on enforcer involuntary disappearances with reference to GSO 217, which state the aforementioned group has received information on alleged enforced disappearances in El Salvador in the context of mass deportations carried out between the government of the United States of America and El Salvador. So again, I'm just reading through. This is a little bit different order. The Salvadoran state has conducted a detailed analysis of the claims presented in the communications sent by the working group, which indicate that the persons mentioned, 1, were in the custody of the United States, immigrants and customs enforcement. 2, were allegedly deported to El Salvador on March 15. 3, ceased to appear in ICE's online detainee locator system as of that date. 4, were identified on a list of deportees published by a local media outlet. And 5, their fate and whereabouts are unknown. In response to the above, the state of El Salvador states that it has responded to previous communications from the working group on the alleged disappearances of persons of Venezuelan nationality, in particular through note B 1592025 dated April 3rd of this year, which pointed out the lack of grounds for requesting information from the state of El Salvador. It therefore requested that the elements that would constitute an enforced disappearance attributable to the state of El Salvador. Sorry everybody, skipping a line here. Therefore, I'm trying to see my screen here. It therefore requested that the cases be excluded from El Salvador's statistics in accordance with the working methods of the group here, since those persons were not under the jurisdiction of the Salvadoran state at the time of their alleged deprivation of liberty or when they were last seen. In response to the above, the state of El Salvador states it's responded to previous communications from the group, again, on that dated April 3rd of this year, which pointed out the lack of grounds, again, for requesting information. I'm going to just skim through this because this looks like it's the same Therefore, requested the cases be excluded again. The state reiterates, let's just bump down here. The state reiterates, again, this is all translated from Spanish, everyone. The state reiterates each of the terms of its previous communications, in particular that 1, its authorities have not arrested, detained, transferred the persons, or referred those persons referred to the working group's communication. 2, the actions of the state of El Salvador have been limited to the implementation of a bilateral cooperation mechanism on prison matters with another state. 3, it has only facilitated the use of Salvadoran prison infrastructure for reception and custody of persons detained within the scope of the justice system and law enforcement of another state. 4, the jurisdiction and legal responsibility for these persons lie exclusively with the competent foreign authorities. So this is so important here. All right, let's just make sure we understand. Exclusively there. 5, the actions attributable to the Salvadoran state are limited to its sovereignty and territorial jurisdiction. 6, the claims presented do not attribute any direct action to the Salvadoran state that meets the definition of enforced disappearance under international law and the working methods of the working group. 7, there are no valid grounds for the working group to request information from El Salvador. And is that 2 7s? I think we have 2 7s here. We do. So we've got a 7 here and a 7 here. El Salvador is committed to complying with its international human rights obligations, including the prevention of enforced disappearances, in accordance with the Human Rights Council resolution here. All right, and we'll skip down. It requests of the working group to consider the response of the state of El Salvador's communication here having been submitted and excluding from statistics these people. So that's the same language as well, because the deprivation of liberty was not here. What does all that mean? Oh, oh my gosh. Yes. Okay. Right. So here, basically what they're saying here, let me pull this, what's the most important piece out here. The most important piece is, this is the facts that they were given by the UN. This is what they were told. And they're saying, we gave you information on this date, and this is the records that we gave you. Right, and there's lack of grounds because the only thing they were doing was opening the doors up to the building, basically. All right, so they're saying you didn't really have any grounds to request any more information than what we've already given you. And here, again, they're just citing that same paperwork. That's just a copy of that. The most important thing here is also to remember, they're saying we've got a joint cooperative agreement with the U.S. There's a joint agreement, and we have only the ability to have our prison open for people that have gone through their system. Does that make sense? Your people to detain them, right? But you better, well, right. And this is something else too that was discussed in the filings in this case. Is that, this happens. We take on outside contracts with prisons, right? There's plenty of contracts because we've got so many criminals. We're not even talking about immigrants. I'm talking about just U.S. criminals. There's so many that we're, like stacked up on each other. So they've got to kind of rent out other space for prisoners because we just have too many. We have most in the entire world. Stacked into these facilities. So we make contracts with other places to take our criminals. What's happening here, though, is that we don't have criminals. We don't have criminals. They made a contract with a prison in El Salvador to take 200 criminals. And El Salvador was like, sure, we'll take them. But the U.S. is in charge of all of the jurisdictional issues. So they are the U.S. people They're just staying in an El Salvadoran facility here, all right? They're limited to implementation of a bilateral cooperation mechanism. So they basically are saying, we got nothing to do with this. We have a bilateral cooperation mechanism with another state, which, you know, the U.S. does. They do that when it comes to trying to find beds for, you know, prisoners. That can happen. But they do not have the custody that they're talking about. In this context, the jurisdiction and legal responsibility for these persons lies exclusively with the United States. In this context here, the jurisdiction and legal responsibility. So any kind of legal responsibility, which is what we're doing right now, we're in the middle of a case, is up to the United States. That's really the key here. So they're going to take criminals only, and the U.S. has legal responsibility over them. All right? That's what they're saying. Four that we know about exactly. Who's running the prisons? El Salvador is running the prisons. We're renting space, basically, from El Salvador for people, for human beings. We're renting space. And they're like, we've got beds. Let them in. The U.S. is like, here you go. But are they criminals, right? Because El Salvador says they need to be in your justice system. That's the understanding of the agreement. You know, now, if we just look at Abrego Garcia as an example, no criminal record, no criminal conviction. Now, if we were to look at the 8 fellas shipped to South Sudan, all of them had records. Were they in prison? A couple of them were they not? Yeah, well, I mean, it's kind of split. They all have criminal records. So even though they're no longer in prison, so maybe half of those fellas would have met the requirements to go into the El Salvador place if they were serving time in a prison and had been convicted. Right? But the other ones who had already served their time, they're not supposed to be here. This is for people who have convictions who are supposed to be in prison. So it's supposed to be like a prison to prison transfer situation, not an administrative detention facility. Now we're shipping them to a prison situation. We're in 2 different realms of the law. Two different realms, right? The criminal world here, which is what El Salvador said they agreed to, versus the administrative problem of, paperwork and deportation. Like, deportation is not for a criminal situation when we're dealing with these particular people that were held in the detention place, right? So if they don't show that these fellas were all in prison before they were taken to detention and then taken to El Salvador, they're going to have some pretty big problems. They're going to have violated their own agreement with El Salvador. That's what's going on here. All right. So what has to happen for these? First of all, we've got 200 people. We're missing 4. We don't know where 4 people are. We don't know where they're at. They've literally disappeared. They need to be serving time. All right. So they haven't finished serving their time. Sometimes that can happen when, our prisons are filled up. It's like, well, we got to get rid of a few people so we can add a few more people, I guess. They're serving time because they have convictions, right? And so they're basically transferring prisoners. It's a transfer of prisoners here. And they are, and the U.S. is legally responsible for them. So the questions are, well, how long are their sentences over in El Salvador? Is the time that they're serving for life? Are there 200 people with life sentences that were in U.S. prisons now being sent over to El Salvador? Because those are the requirements, the factors, in order for this to fit into what El Salvador is saying, right? So again, El Salvador is saying our requirements were basically a prison-to-prison situation. And what we have is people who were to be deported. We barely have any information about these people. The information that we do have regarding the numbers and such, that's come from the media or from the families. Yeah, exactly, VC. Exactly. Due process takes care. Well, yeah, that would be, if you did the due process piece, we would be okay. So the other thing here, right, and I think this is worth noting, is that they're trying to use the Alien Enemies Act, right? And I think this is a really good point that you're bringing up, because the Alien Enemies Act says the president himself can decide who he wants to kick out, right? And so here we're talking about Venezuelan peoples. So I'm just going to abbreviate that, all right? So Venezuelan people just need to be kicked out because they're seen as alien enemies. So we don't need due process. The president can just do whatever he wants. Fine. But what's the agreement you have with the country actually taking the people? This is what we were missing in this entire case. We were missing what the agreement was with El Salvador. So El Salvador just gave us the agreement. And so when we go through it now, we can see that the U.S. may not be in compliance with this agreement. So this hush-hush secretive agreement that they were making with El Salvador is like, well, here it is, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Here's the agreement right here. And now, again, because we didn't have the due process, because the president just picked these 200 people to, ship to El Salvador under the AEA, we don't have all of the pieces in order to be in compliance with that agreement. Yeah, I think El Salvador thought it was like fun and games. I think a lot of people do. They think it's kind of fun and games in the beginning, like, haha, here's a funny tweet. But then the UN comes knocking on the door, like, knock, knock. We actually, have rules and laws. There, it's like, whoa, that's not funny anymore. We don't have these 4 people. And these 200 people that we do have, that's under an agreement. We said we'd take their criminals into our prisons. Yeah. Yeah, it's lies. It's lots of lies. What's going to happen? How's the administration going to be held accountable? Well, it sounds like El Salvador, via Exhibit 1 here, is saying that the 4 people who've disappeared, which is what this UN group is trying to do, they're following up on 4 people who've disappeared. They're saying, we're not the ones that have them. The U.S. is the one that has them. So the U.S. is the one who has legal responsibility for these 4 people. They're not here with us. And because of that, they're with the U.S. So the handoff didn't occur in such a way that El Salvador would have custody of them. That's what El Salvador is saying. All right. So that means under the U.S., they lost 4 people. So now the UN's going to come in and look at that and be like, where are the 4 people, and walk through the process again. And we're in international treaty waters here. So we're not in the, we had some troubles before with the International Criminal Court, right? Where there was an executive order suspending blah, 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 blah. We're not talking about that. We're not even talking about that here. We're talking about involuntary disappearances investigations through the UN. So it's a different world. It's a different set of laws that they're working with for these 4 people. Oopsie, too late it's not aging well. Exactly. It's not aging well at all. But I mean, it's horrible, right? How do we lose 4 people? Well, that's really the question. This is just so horrific. Because, and because of, too, the nature and lack of any kind of credibility or trust in the government, I mean, it's like, well, how did we lose 4 people? Well, somebody with some kind of power that wanted to get rid of 4 people, they just got rid of 4 people, right? I mean, that's like, it's awful. I'm not saying this hasn't happened before either, but in this day and age, with the technology that we have now, you can't do this kind of stuff without people finding out. There's no way to just, take care of it anymore. That's no longer an option. Yes. Yeah. Miller knows, probably. There's no excuse for it. Agreed. And also, again, and I just can't emphasize this too much, 200 people moved from the United States to El Salvador. Were they all prisoners? Were all these people prisoners, transferred to detainment centers, and then transferred to another prison? Because if not, you have people here in prison who did not commit any crime. And any violations of the law that did happen were administrative civil violations. Or even if you want to say illegally crossing the border, what's that, 6 months misdemeanor? So 6 months misdemeanor is going to get you over to El Salvador for the rest of your life? That doesn't seem to be the same level. So even if you were literally crawling over the border, which is actually relatively rare, really, because they get caught quick at the border. But even if they were doing that, it's still not a life sentence. That's not a life sentence. And they certainly haven't had any kind of a criminal trial to find a conviction of that. One was a hairdresser. One was a soccer player. Exactly, Shelley. Exactly. Now, for these 200 people, the 4 that are missing, we have no idea. But these 200 people, yeah. When do the international courts step in? Well, right now they are investigating. So basically, the international police are investigating this. So we're at the investigative process. So there are two, if you look at it like this, there are 2 people that they are investigating. One person said, well, we have an agreement, but it was the other guy that did it. And so now they're going to talk to the other guy. And the other guy is the United States. So El Salvador and the US basically made this agreement, and 4 people are missing. And under this agreement, we may still have some issues here with these 200 people, but we're going to have to wait until the investigation's finished. And they're not US citizens. Correct. And they don't need to be. They don't need to be US citizens because this is international, just human rights. So when the UN's involved, it doesn't matter where you're from. If you disappear, they're going to try to find you. And that's what the United Nations does. And the 200 people here probably, no, not citizens either. But in this agreement, according to El Salvador, they should have been criminals. And if they're not criminals, if they're just people without citizenship, which again, the worst you can get charged with is a 6-month misdemeanor, you're not going to be sentenced to life in an El Salvadorian prison. And where was your trial? Where was your criminal trial? All right. So even if you were illegally crossing, all right, though, this is huge. This is way beyond the worst punishment available. So if you take the absolute worst punishment you can get for going over the border and hanging out in the US, right? That's the worst punishment. You're looking at, what, 6 months in prison. And right now they've got life sentences in El Salvador. See what I'm saying? Worry about US citizens? Well, yeah, because guess what? These 4 people can just disappear and these 200 people can be taken to a prison against the law. So can US citizens. That's just how it goes. So no one's safe, right? So your country's only as good as how they treat the people that they dislike. That's right. So you get that, don't you? That it kind of works together. How do you get a life sentence? Oh, thanks. Yikes. Oh my gosh, that's beautiful. Thank you. Life sentence for crossing the border. Exactly, Vonda. Exactly. You can unalive people. You can unalive people in the manslaughter area. Multiple people. You can unalive them and you would still not be sentenced to life. All right? You still would not be sentenced to life. So you can have voluntary manslaughter and homicide in the 2nd degree. I mean, you can, shoot up a whole house full of people and you still won't necessarily get life. So the fact that grabbing a bag and walking over the border and going and working in the US is a life imprisonment sentence without a trial. It's absolutely inhumane. It's absolutely barbaric. The president's on the hook. Well, the thing is, people who made the agreement, right? So we've got the Secretary of State. So Marco Polo here, who made the agreement, but he works for the president. So the president's the boss and the minion made the deal. So they'll go after the minion and the president will say, well, I didn't know what he was doing, but you can't do that as the president. And that's what I think this person who's in the White House doesn't really understand. You can't just push the blame off on other people because the buck stops with the president. That's the culture of the current administration. It is, and it's humane, and it is barbaric. But, you know, if we're going to be barbaric, do it within our borders. Don't go shipping people across the border, because now the international world is going to say, you know, we only allow certain kinds of barbarity, and this isn't one of them. What enforcement authority does the UN have over the other two, over the two countries? From the US and El Salvador? I mean, right, we've got international, people here, and then they are taken into court. So that's the authority. We have had many times where we've had WAR criminals or people involved in that who have been brought in front of court and then sentenced, right? When it happens in other countries, what typically happens, great question, Boxer Mom, and I don't know. I really just don't even know. I have not spent much time in the UN international law world to be able to speak of it. I just haven't. It's never really been an issue before. Well, the International Criminal Court's a little bit different situation, all right? The International Criminal Court is just one area. And of course, the executive order is like, we don't have anything to do with them. And they did that early on in the administration. So they were like, well, we don't have to comply with that. The International Criminal Court's is a different animal than if you're violating a international treaty. All right. So if you're in violation of an international treaty, that's a different animal. All right. So because the US isn't signed up technically with the ICC, they're not part of that agreement. What you'll look to are the requirements under the treaty. And the treaty will set out what's required and what happens for enforcement if you are in violation. So that's where you're going to find those rules. Right? Yeah. Oh my gosh, this is just a mess. Yeah, good question. International criminal law, I have not seen any creators doing that, but I'm not saying that there aren't. That's just not been on my FYP. Probably because mostly on my FYP are AI little cute kittens singing songs and dancing in a chicken costume. So probably that's why I don't know. But there are absolutely going to be people. What you're going to want to look to, though, are kind of like the CIA areas, the people who have like prior FBI, CIA. Well, you're really going to want to focus on CIA. So prior CIA or retired CIA people, that's probably the direction you want to go in. How do I get that on my FYP? I'm telling you, just put kittens in costumes. I can't deal with anything more than that, and like a ballet. That's it. That's where I'm at. Oh, CIA's bad news. Absolutely. And I know you're listening right now, CIA, and you know I'm right. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I can barely handle that. Seriously, that's where I'm at. I'm like, show me how you're breaking your shoes in again. After the Nutcracker season passed, everyone, I thought I was going to be going crazy, but luckily, oh my gosh, the glass fruit. Yes. Okay. Oslo for politics. Okay. Good to know. Yeah. I just don't have that international piece. The agent's not eating ramen. True story. gosh. Yes, I saw it too. Really, tug of war to Punjabi music. Oh my gosh, that's like new life goals right now. Acting out movie scenes. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to see that. Yes, yes. The UN supported El Salvador with money for projects. They can face sanctions from UN. Yeah, yeah. True, exactly. And again, it's all about, you know, where those sanctions are set and what's been agreed upon. Yikes bikes, thanks. Oh my gosh. I've not met Oslo. I haven't, but it sounds great. Really, for me, I go to Rolo when I'm looking for any kind of immigration stuff right now, because he's just got his finger on the pulse of what's going on. So I look into that, but honestly, I don't get too far away from domestic cases because there's just so many. There's just so many. I just don't have room in my brain for international stuff. Okay, I'm gonna look him up. Yeah, how did I not know? How did I miss it? I'll tell you how I missed it. I've been reading those executive orders. That's how I missed it. All right, I'm writing it down so I can look him up here. This really is a chaotic time. Yes. Oh my gosh. I'm really excited now. Okay. Really? Okay, Rolo is another creator on here who can, he just gives it to you straight up. And I appreciate that so much when he's explaining immigration law here. So I don't have his exact address at my fingertips. So if anybody else out there who's following the Rolo wants to add him here, a curious red monster. Are you serious? Is Oslo a person or a puppet? Breath of fresh air. Really? A red monster? Really? Did I do a live with him? No, I have my own red monsters. Oh my gosh. It is possible, Snarks and Larks, it absolutely is possible for the U.S. to be sanctioned. Absolutely is. Absolutely. And again, really, it's a puppet. Oh my gosh. All right. Now I'm like extremely excited about it. I'm extremely excited. To make a current events closet docket. Well, you need to. A political puppet. Oh my gosh, I love it. I love it so much. That's fabulous, everybody. My closet docket, I'm going to tell you right now, everyone, is so packed. It is absolutely packed. There were 15 different cases that had something happen to them today in the courts. And so I'm now putting like the whole week's worth of filings now on the poster boards, and I'm watching it and I'm like, this is just absolutely ridiculous. How can we have this many cases? It's just absolutely crazy. We're in crazy town. Thank you, Navy vet, Rolo, crimmigration lawyer. I love that word, crimmigration. That's fantastic. Yes, he does great work. He does very great work. He's an excellent I think he's a really good teacher too. The way that he speaks about things, it's very easy to walk down the road with him. Sometimes with immigration law and environmental law, honestly, I get tangled up. But the way that he sets it out, very easy to understand. Extremely easy. So we love that. That's how you have so many cases. Oh my goodness. It's funny because I don't want to cry. It's painful. Oh my gosh, I know. Garage docket, TikTok classroom. I know. I've got, oh my goodness. It's a lot. Yes, 4 missing people. So, and again, it's really, we got to prioritize here because there are so many cases, because, you know, we've had multiple cases filed just this week. So you got to prioritize. And the ones that I'm prioritizing are the ones with the most like egregious constitutional violations. And of course, the habeas cases, the visa revocation cases, all of those temporary protected, the TPS cases, those are all kind of on my first swipe when I go through it. So hello, Thomas. So let's take a minute here and I'll just show you the rest of the paperwork, everyone. I've read everything that is in here. Now it's just copied into different places. And again, putting in a new place. We've had Arizona, we've got Texas, 2 Texases, or Texi perhaps, I don't know. I'm trying to not be too mean to Texas right now, and I feel like I can be mean because I'm originally from Texas. from San Antonio. So, bring it on. All right, so we've got some more here. Again, for each of the 4 missing people, they have the documents here. I just finished reading through this as well. This again is just the same paragraph that's been cut and pasted. Ooh, let's look and see, where are we at here? Is this Texas also? Oh, this was a different, all right, so this was a different detention center in Texas. So 3 out of Texas, 1 out of Arizona. And it looks like 3 different facilities. Right, and then we've got translation. So the rest of these documents are in Spanish, and they are just translated into English, what I just went through and read. So for anyone who's interested in what the rest of the documents are here, then the rest is all in Spanish, which, makes sense. Where can we find all the info we should know if we ever get stopped by ICE? Ooh, good question. Ooh, oh my gosh. Let me grab my, I just got a brand new printout. Oh my gosh. I tell you what, this color printer, everybody, that I'm so thankful for, because it's from your wonderful support that I was able to get a color printer. Oh my goodness, I was so excited. All right, here, everybody. I'm glad you asked me so I can show you this. This is amazing. I need to do a post on it. So this, everyone, is from the American Immigration Lawyers Association. All right, so American Immigration Lawyers Association. And oh my gosh, it's just amazing what they go through here. They explain to you what you need to know. 288 taken. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Oh my goodness. Oh, I guess I rounded it down. 288. Yikes. All right, so here we go. Know your rights if ICE stops you in public. So if you're in public, all people living in the United States, including undocumented immigrants, have certain U.S. constitutional rights. If you are undocumented and immigration and customs enforcement officers stop you on the street or in a public place, remember your options and rights. So number 1, you have the right to ask if you're under arrest or free to leave. So that's really important. Am I free to leave is so important. You can say, am I under arrest? And they can say no, but you still may be under arrest. So you have to get that am I free to leave piece in there. So they're saying, don't panic and run away. Ask if you're being arrested or detained. If the ICE officer says no, you can ask if you're free to leave. If they say yes, walk away calmly, which is so true. It's like walk away like you're walking away from a T-Rex, all right? Slow. If they say no, stay where you are and do not attempt to leave. So if they've already got you stopped, that's what I would say here, all right? What I tell people is if you can see the people, you need to be running away, all right? So just make sure you're aware of your surroundings. If they see you, then you got a problem. But if you see them, you still have a chance to run. And I recommend the running. Class actions all along. Exactly right, VC. Yes, they're all covered. They're all here. In the JGG case, which is now the Sanchez case, they're all there. You have a right to remain silent, right? You don't have to speak. If you're asked where you were born or how you entered the United States, refuse to answer, remain silent. If you choose to remain silent, say I choose to remain silent. Also, we've got those cards that have been making the rounds too, to help you. If you don't understand English, state the language you speak. This is so important, all right? It's so important. Most people, if they see somebody in a uniform, feel like obligated to answer their questions. No, remain silent. Are you from here? I'm, remaining silent. And they're like, well, legally you have to tell us. I'm like, well, I don't know that I have to tell you because you're, the police, but you don't have any papers on yet. So that's a huge issue. Just remain silent. I'm remaining silent. There you go. Oh, really? Okay, good job. So remain silent. There are a couple of states where they'll ask you for basic information. You have to give it to them. I don't know. It's different depending on each state. So you'll have to check your state. And that's always a good idea. Pull up and see, like if you're in Ohio, does Ohio law enforcement require you to give your identification? You can do that for each one of your states, everyone. It takes like 2 minutes and then you'll know. Next, you're not required to show immigration documents. You may refuse to show identity documents that reveal your country of nationality or citizenship. Never show false documents or provide false information. That's right. And I tell people it's better to not say anything than to say something that you know is false. Just stop talking. Just stop talking, because you're going to get yourself into a bigger problem. All right. So if you are scared to answer, don't answer. And if they're like, tell me, you got to tell me, still don't answer. You don't have to answer. All right. Do not say you were born in the United States if you were not, and do not claim to be a U.S. citizen if you are not one. So just remain silent. Texas requires ID if required. If required, ask by law enforcement. Oh, that's good to know. Navy vet. So, right, if they're asking for your ID, now your ID is different than your immigration documents, right? So that's something to remember as well. You can refuse a search. Oh my gosh, one of the biggest reasons why police do searches and without warrants is because people consent. Don't consent. You have the right to refuse a search of yourself or your personal belongings unless the officers have probable cause or a warrant. So probable cause is the exception to the warrants clause. By the way, this isn't legal advice. I'm just telling you how I feel about the words here. ICE officers cannot search you without your consent unless they have probable cause. And I just did a video on that a few days ago. Probable cause isn't hard to meet that level. You can challenge it if you get to court, but it doesn't take a lot to get to probable cause. However, they can pat you down outside your clothing if they suspect you have a weapon. And that is reasonable suspicion level, and that's called a Terry Pat here. How do you know if it's a real warrant? Good question. It's a really good question. And you fight those kinds of things out in court, but what's happening here is we're not sure we're able to get everybody into court because of how this administration's working. So that's a really good question. If ICE officers try to search you, you can say, I do not consent to a search. If they search you anyway, do not resist physically. Document what happened. This can help you in future legal cases. That's true. You have a right to speak to a lawyer. If you're detained, taken into custody, you have a right to contact an attorney. If you don't have a lawyer, you can tell officers you want to speak to one by saying, I want to speak to a lawyer. Obviously, this is part of your rights to have an attorney if you are judicial signed by a judge. So warrants that are signed by a judge have full faith and credit, but warrants that the ICE people use are signed by like the ICE people. So full faith and credit's not really on the table right now because their credibility is shot. So we don't know who is a credible ICE officer and who's not, because their behavior has made it so that we can no longer trust them. So you got to be careful about that. You can contact your country's consulate too if you have been detained by ICE. You do not have to sign anything. Don't sign any paperwork without speaking with a lawyer first. True, and they'll pressure you. They'll put a pen in your hand and put a piece of paper down and say, this is nothing. We just need to do this so we can give you back your purse when we let you out. Or this just allows us to give you water. It doesn't matter. Don't sign it unless you know exactly what it is. How do you even know? Right, that's tough. Cubes grab and go. Exactly right. And that's one of the pieces that, this is great so long as the system's working the way it's supposed to. This is not going to work if they are not abiding by the rules of the system. That's so true. That's very, 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 very true and worrisome. If you believe your rights have been violated, write down what happened. Ask a witness to do so. Put specific details in there. All right, so there you go. Know your rights if ICE stops you in public. Know your rights if ICE comes to your workplace. This is for employees, so this is important. Also, first, stay calm. That's very important. But let's pop up here. All persons living in the United States, including undocumented immigrants, have certain U.S. constitutional rights. If Immigration Customs Enforcement officers come to your workplace, they must have either 1, a valid search warrant, or 2, consent from your employer. And that's kind of a big deal because your employer can consent. And if they consent, then, all bets are off. But you don't have to consent if your employer does. And they can come into non-public areas here. They can't enter the public areas of your workplace. So, and that has to do with, like if there's a lobby or something like that that's in public, or, the hallway of a courthouse, that's all public. So stay calm, don't panic and run away. Again, if you see them, but they don't see you, that's the runaway period of time. That's how I have assessed it myself, okay? I'm not giving you legal advice, but if I see a cop, if I see someone in uniform, but they don't see me, that means I can run now. So I'm going to do that. All right? If the officer stops you, you may ask if you're free to leave. Yes. If yes, walk away calmly. Again, T-Rex style. Don't anger the beast. And number 2, you've got a right to remain silent again, right? So you don't have to say anything. Just don't say anything here. Because anything you say, not only is it incriminating, but it can lead to probable cause for further searching. And that can really tip into a world that we don't want to be in. That's what my college recommends. Really, for employees only. Right, exactly. Unless the employer allows it. Can I warn others about ICE presence? Sure, why not? Why not? That's freedom of speech right there. Not legal advice, FYI. But if you're like, hey, the popo's here, you can say that legally under your First Amendment rights, for sure. Just like you can wear a mask. And I recommend too, let's talk about the mask for a minute. I recommend putting some kind of a fun design on your mask, because that is clearly freedom of expression. So highly recommend getting a fancy fun mask design, or put a sticker on it. You don't have to. I just think it's fun, because then you can say this is freedom of expression. So you can't pull me in for that. Keep that in mind. You're not required to show immigration documents. Again, you have a right to contact a lawyer. Again, you do not have to sign anything. No signing here. If you believe your rights have been violated, you can go forward in court, so long as, the system's working. Right, your family can identify you by your mask too. Exactly. And, again, we're talking about a special group of people who are struggling when they are in public. And one of the things you can do is wear a mask. And people can say that you got to take your mask off. And then what the courts have said is, well, it can be freedom of expression or symbolic speech, right? So use that. It's like wearing a black armband. Use that, absolutely. Have a medical reason. Well, that's the thing. They're going after the easy ones too. And it's not easy if you're wearing a mask, right? If they can immediately identify you as someone from a country they don't like, they're going to step up and say, I had probable cause, and then work backwards and, file a bunch of crap. But if you're wearing a mask, half your face isn't apparent. So they're not going to be able to immediately identify you, right? So that's one of the ways that can work. So it hides your face in a way that makes it so it's not as easy. And then they'll just move to the next person. So like, hey, this one's wearing a mask, but this one's not. So we're going to go after the one that's not, because that's the easy one to get. It's costume, absolutely. Right. You're trying to cover your skin, and that's no lie, everybody. That's the truth, right? So if you are a brown person like myself, we wear a mask that they can't necessarily see that we're that brown, and they're going to go after a brown person not wearing a mask. So it's just easier that way, and they're going to take the easiest route. Yeah. How are they pulling people out of duct? Oh my gosh. Yeah. That's again, it's, if it's a public place, wherever they're at, all they need to do is look at you. And if they look at you, they'll be able to work backwards for probable cause and grab you. Right. Oh, sure. Now, I know a lot of people that find this incredibly upsetting, and I do too. But the thing is, I can go out without a mask, and I can walk around, and I can have, a confrontation with the cubes and have to deal with that, right? Which is going to be a mess, because I'm going to hulk out and bad things are going to happen. Or I can wear a mask, keep my head down, and not deal with it, right? So that I am making it a choice. Some people are like, oh, they're restricting my freedom. I'm like, no, I'm choosing freedom by choosing to run away whenever I see anyone with a uniform and by wearing a mask. And if I'm outside, I wear sunglasses. So you can't tell. You can't tell. And that's how I go about in a big, huge red state with brown skin. That's just what I do. Right, for now, temporarily, everyone, temporarily, because the karma's coming. So I have no doubt that this is short term, and it's just a survival technique, right? It all depends on your situation, right. But if the doctor reports you, yeah, so there's problems with that doctor. I mean, yowzers. Yeah, it is sad to hear, but I mean, that's just where we're at. That's just how it is. You just have to be smart. You have to be smarter than them, and that's not too hard. It's really not. And for those that are like, we want to express ourselves, absolutely do that. But just make sure, like, Real Life Works was saying, make sure you're in a situation that, allows for that. I've seen several people or several groups of people kind of swarming in different situations with the cubes. Like, read the room, see what's going on, and make your decisions from there. But for me, because of where I live, because of, how small the percentage of brown people there are in my life, I hide. I tiptoe and I hide. Right. Exactly. And the other thing too, though, everyone, is what I'm noticing this time around, unlike the first administration, this time around, is that you're not necessarily off the hook if you are YT. You're not necessarily, and I mean those as letters, okay? You're not necessarily off the hook. I'm seeing them kind of looking around in that area too, and I've not seen that before. I have not seen where it's been more than our black and brown, friends and family. I've not seen them do that before, but it's like it's starting. So we're kind of really getting too far here into the number and the kinds of people that are getting pulled because, wow, when the YT people, you know what I'm saying? I can't say this. You know what I'm saying? Things are bad when that group of people is also getting profiled. It's bad. All right, I'll just leave it like that. I'll leave it like that. And just put that there for you. Oh, I know, Kaya. Oh, I know. And, I know. It's difficult. It's difficult for sure. It's easier in the winter. I would say it's easier in the winter, but it absolutely is so troubling. And, I've told people this before. I have 2 children. One easily passes as YT so long as they, take care of their appearance in a certain way. But my other one does not. My other one looks incredibly Hispanic, and there's no way that they can hide that. So every time that one leaves the house, I'm worried. But at least they know the protocol if they get pulled over, and they have to be very careful. But there are some situations where you just can't. You absolutely can't, and you're taking risk every time you go outside. Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's painful. It's painful. All right. What happens if we defend someone to the cubes? I'm not sure. Do you mean like, that's a great question, Krista. Do you mean like in the moment? Like in the moment you're trying to kind of in the moment say, look, stop. Because in the moment you can have interference, with official acts. You got to be careful about that in those moments. But you also, interference with official acts or harassment of a police officer, any of those things are very, very, like the lowest level misdemeanor. Sometimes it's worth it. I don't say violate the law, but I do say make your own choice. Sometimes it's absolutely worth it. If I see someone getting grabbed, that's your call. That's your call, right? So the worst that you can get charged with in these situations, and just in general for criminal law pieces, anytime you have contact with another person, you can have a potential assault or battery depending on which area you're in. So an unwanted touching would be an assault or a battery. So putting your hands or pushing someone out of the way, if it's a cube, could lead to this kind of a charge, which is what happened with one of our congresswomen recently. So you can do that. You can have interference, whatever, with official acts or however your jurisdiction puts it. These, again, would be the lowest level misdemeanor, right? So that's your call. That's your call on what you want. Sometimes there's a harassment of an officer here, or but that's typically what you're going to be dealing with, is this low-level assault situation. Will we survive this? We will. We will. We will absolutely survive this. I promise we will survive it. And we've been through it before, multiple times, and we're stronger than we were. We're so much stronger than we used to be. Several people have said, this reminds me so much of 1930s Germany. And to that, I say, my response when they're saying, well, we're in 1930s Germany, is we aren't in Germany in the 1930s. Like, we're not the German people. The bad guys may be lining up and presenting the same techniques, but they're presenting it to a different population of people. We're so much smarter, stronger. We are more connected and just have so many more ways to fight than they did back in the 1930s. Like, our options are almost endless on how we can fight back. So if you look to Germany in the 1930s and you look to the general public and the general population in Germany, there wasn't much fight left in them from what happened after World War I. And that's completely understandable. But we are not Germany. And so I try to remind everybody of that. Where can I get this sheet? So right. And again, another reason why I wanted to bring this up here is because it's available online here. Hopefully it's focusing. Let me see, everybody. Oh, it's not focusing. Let's go back down again. Maybe it'll focus. Well, all right, there we go. Immigration Lawyers Association. Here is where you can go. Yeah. And they've got great information. So again, and it's not legal advice because it's coming from attorneys, and we know we can't give legal advice. So it's helpful legal information that you can use, you can give to others and share. And it's, I think it's good to do that. Right. ACLU, my gosh, they are doing amazing work. Oh my goodness. I feel like half of the ACLU attorneys aren't sleeping anymore. There's no sleep because they are just busting it, trying to get out there and help as much as they can. So they're doing amazing work. And what is it? Defense of Democracy is another group that's doing it. And CREW is doing it, which is a group against overreach and unethical behaviors. I mean, they're just educational purposes only. Exactly right. Coffee IVs, yes. But they're doing amazing work out there. And there are so many groups. And I tell you, Court Listener, which is a nonprofit, and they are the ones that make it possible for us to find all the documents. Oh my gosh. I mean, they're like the heroes of this administration too. They're making it so we can all find everything and see everything so that we can read for ourselves what's going on. They're just doing amazing work. State AGs have formed posses. They're like, hey, all right, let's file on this one. So in batches of 7 to 12 states at a time filing on these cases. Absolutely. I mean, it's amazing. Right. And you didn't have state attorney generals in Germany in 1930. We've got people here who are like, no, we're not doing that. Red cards, yes, Willie B, exactly, in English and in Spanish. Court Listener all the time, me too. Me too, and the Federal Reporter, that's kind of my go-to places. But, I mean, there are, I'm not trying to say we're okay. Like, this isn't okay. None of this is okay. This sucks. This whole situation sucks. But we'll get through it to the other side. And then, when we get to the other side, it's payback time. Yep, I'm not kidding. We'll get there. We'll get there, everybody. We just got to hang in there, right? We got to just get through this piece. Right. That would really pressure our local leaders to push back. Yeah, I agree. The locals where it's at. Those school boards, the city hall meetings or whatever they're called in your area, county supervisors or whatever, that's where it's at. That's where it's at. And, we're busy people. We don't have time to, do all of this all the time, but just pick one and follow it and see what they're doing locally and see how they're dealing with stuff. And if they're not doing it right, call them out on it. I was at a city, was it a city council? No, it was a school board meeting. And I was the only person from the public there. And they signed a brand new, like $5 million contract thingamadoo. I don't know what it was. And they said they wouldn't have been able to sign it had someone from the public not been there. And so I was like, can I read it before you sign it? And they're like, okay. So I read it and I was like, yeah, that's fine. We've already agreed to all of this, so it's fine. And then they signed it. You just never know what's going to happen. You just never know. And so, don't wear yourself out. You got to, keep some back for yourself. But if you're like, okay, Tuesday, I got nothing going on too much, so I'm going to go out and see what's going on. Then go and introduce yourself. Right? That's crazy, I know. Right, Thomas? Right? I try to not tell anybody that I don't let them know what my job is, so that helps quite a bit. But yeah, grassroots is where it's at. Grassroots is where it's at, and it's probably where you're starting to see some changes too, if you think about it. That's where a lot of our elections are kind of starting to move one way or the other. But it's up to you what you want to do. Just take care of yourselves too, though, everybody, because we're all getting tired. We're definitely getting tired of yelling and feeling like no one's listening. But the other thing is too, though, they're getting tired also. And so you got to keep that in the back of your mind. They're exhausted. You can't put this many executive orders out and defend this many cases and do this much harm without getting exhausted. So they're tired too. We got to just keep that in mind as we go through it. Yeah, the budgets, that's where it's at, right? Follow the money. Yep, absolutely. All right, everyone, my 90 minutes has hit, and so I better sign off for now. Thank you all for coming. And again, we were going through the El Salvador perspective here on what the agreement was, and they let us know finally. Again, we don't have it 100% confirmation here, but now we've got some idea of what this agreement between El Salvador was and the U.S., and that's huge. Definitely huge in this case, where we've got a judge that's already said you have violated my court order, and that's not okay. So 100,000, thanks everybody. Oh, that's so sweet. I appreciate it so much. This document here, Coyote Katie, this is the case right here. So pull this case up online and you'll be able to see all of the orders, all of the evidence that's come through. So that's all available for you. So take care, everybody. I know we're kind of, we're working hard here, but we'll make it through. I'll catch you all later. Take care of yourselves and your family and friends, because they need help too.